We have got David Axelrod this hour, the president's senior strategist for his re-election campaign. David Axelrod's going to be joining us in just a moment live. I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. The U.S. Congress, as you know, has 435 members in the House and another 100 members in the Senate. At any given time, at least one of those duly elected 535 people is in trouble. I don't just mean they're having a hard time getting reelected kind of trouble. I don't just mean they're having a bad news cycle kind of trouble. I mean real, actual trouble. Like large bundles of cash from bribes you took stashed in the freezer trouble. Like soliciting sex from a particularly attractive undercover police officer in an airport bathroom trouble. Like convicted on 11 different ethics violations by your colleagues in Congress trouble. Like unexplained $96,000 checks from your parents to your mistress trouble. Sometimes members of Congress get into trouble. It happens in both parties, and frankly, it happens all the time. Sometimes, depending on the particular type of trouble and the particular member of Congress, it can get a lot of national attention, but sometimes it doesn't get very much attention. But frankly, somebody is always in trouble in Congress. Right now, the man who I guess would be Mr. April or maybe Mr. May in the calendar for having trouble in Congress this year would be this guy. His name is Congressman David Rivera. Mr. Rivera is a conservative Republican freshman congressman from Florida. And Congressman Rivera has been investigated by the FBI, by the IRS, by the Miami-Dade Police Department's Public Corruption Unit, by the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, all over corruption allegations that he used his position as a state representative for personal financial gain, that he misused campaign donations for his own personal use, that he lied repeatedly on financial disclosure forms. So far, the only real national attention Congressman Rivera has had for his trouble has been about his financial links to Senator Marco Rubio. The two of them apparently owned a house together, a house that's now in foreclosure. Marco Rubio has also had his own troubles with using political money for personal expenses. So there's been a little bit of coverage about the connections between this under-investigation Florida freshman congressman and the wannabe vice president Florida freshman senator. But even without the Marco Rubio thing, regardless of how much attention it has gotten him nationwide, Congressman David Rivera's legal troubles are real. And that's why he has become the latest astonishing judgment call by this year's Republican Party. Today's scheduled speaker on a conference call organized for reporters by the Republican National Committee, the scheduled speaker was Florida Congressman David Rivera, putting him up as the party spokesman today, the man who has been under investigation by the FBI, the IRS, and multiple local law enforcement agencies for public corruption. Ultimately, after many raised eyebrows, national Republicans announced that, on second thought, David Rivera wouldn't be on the call after all. They said they suddenly had brand new scheduling difficulties with him. But it's just amazing, right? Like you do not want to believe a national party in the middle of a presidential election would pick that guy to represent them to the national press, but they picked that guy. And this really is what national Republicans under Reince Priebus and what the Mitt Romney campaign have been like right now. They keep making errors like this. Remember, it was the Romney campaign this year that lined up two Republicans who voted against the Paycheck Fairness Act as the speakers on a call that was supposed to reassure voters about Mitt Romney's position in favor of fair pay. The National Republican Party set up a conference call to go after President Obama on his American jobs record. That particular call they outsourced to a call center in the Philippines. Please press 1 for English. Remember, the Romney campaign set up a call for reporters to rebut the charge that Mitt Romney would take us back to the old George W. Bush foreign policy. And 2 out of the 3 Romney surrogates they put on that call had been George W. Bush foreign policy people. Republicans this year keep making these big, obvious, laugh-out-loud political errors, these unforced errors, picking exactly the wrong person to make whatever their political case of the day is. They keep making these errors, and they keep not having to pay for them. The Romney campaign did it again today, maybe worse than ever. Today they hosted another conference call for reporters, this one with Romney surrogate John Sununu. John Sununu, of course, the former New Hampshire governor, former White House chief of staff for the first President Bush. John Sununu may be Mitt Romney's highest profile surrogate anywhere in the country. This Republican call that Mr. Sununu was scheduled for today was designed to complain about the Obama campaign taking on Governor Romney's time in the private sector. It was designed to get the world off Mitt Romney's back when it comes to Bain Capital. And on that call, John Sununu told reporters, quote, "I think the Bain record is fair game." Seriously, he actually said that. Listen, it's on tape.
I think the Bain record as a whole is fair game.
The whole message, the single unifying talking point in Republican presidential politics right now for the party, for the Romney campaign, the entire deal comes down to do not talk about Bain Capital. You hate free enterprise and all business if you talk about Bain Capital. Queued up by the Romney campaign to say that, to say do not talk about Bain Capital, and the Romney campaign's highest profile surrogate instead says the opposite. Says, sure, go after Bain. It's fair game. Dig in. And he says it to the reporters summoned by the campaign for the purpose of hearing what he has to say. Just a disaster, right? An epic political gaffe. We'll be hearing about that for 3 days, right? That'll occlude all other developments in domestic politics. Of course not. Of course not. The nation will not be hearing about John Sununu's journey to the pantheon of off-message surrogates. And yet this is exactly the kind of off-message misadventuring that has caused 3 straight days of heartburn for the Obama campaign and for Newark, New Jersey's Democratic Mayor Cory Booker after he criticized both sides of the race for negative campaigning, and he went off message for the Democrats about Bain. Cory Booker made the exact same kind of mistake that John Sununu made today, and he made it on the exact same subject. The only difference is that the Republican in this off-message duo is a much more prominent guy. They made the same faceplant, only John Sununu's was bigger because John Sununu's role in this campaign is bigger. But if you heard about John Sununu's gaffe today at all, congratulations. That means you read very obscure blogs because it was nowhere else. I mean, there ought to be a merit badge for this sort of thing. In politics, in the sport of politics and trying to win by campaigning, it is not a matter of who makes gaffes and who doesn't, or who makes bigger gaffes and who makes smaller ones. It's a matter of who capitalizes on them better when they inevitably happen. And right now, that's very clear. Now, here's the other edge of that sword. The biggest buy for a single ad yet in this political season, bigger than anything you have seen by the Koch brothers, bigger than anything that has run in all of the state craziness campaigns this year, bigger than anything yet from President Obama's reelection campaign, bigger than anything you have seen from the Romney campaign or from the big kahuna from Karl Rove, bigger than anything yet this election season is this new ad from Karl Rove. There was so much money behind this ad. It is a $10 million ad buy. It's going to be playing in so many places that I don't even feel guilty giving it free airtime by playing it right now, because you are definitely going to be seeing it anyway, no matter how hard you try to get away from it.
How will my kids pay that off when they can? Obama started spending like our credit cards have no limit. His healthcare law made health insurance even more expensive. We've had stimulus and bailouts. Obama added almost $16,000 in debt for every American. How will my kids pay that off when they can't even find jobs? Now Obama wants more spending and taxes. That won't fix things. I had so many hopes. Cutting taxes and debt and creating jobs. That's the change we need. Tell President Obama to cut the job-killing debt and support the New Majority Agenda at newmajorityagenda.org.
So you can see there at the end, see down at the bottom, it says paid for by Crossroads Grassroots Policy Strategies. Yeah. Karl Rove and like his 3 billionaires. That's supposed to be the grassroots now. This is the ad that is getting a $10 million rollout, the biggest ad of the election season so far. And the ad shows you, at the end there, shows you that random piece of paper with the words student loan written on it. That's to show you implicitly, I guess, that President Obama has somehow been very bad for people who have student loans. The ad tells you that President Obama started spending like our credit cards have no limit. The ad says we need to cut the debt, and then right after that in the next sentence it says, again, we need to cut the debt. If you agree with those sentiments, you are supposed to go to Karl Rove's new anti-Obama, pro-Romney website and thereby be persuaded to vote for Mitt Romney. So if you agree with those sentiments in that ad, you are supposed to vote for Mitt Romney. Even though on student loans, what's Mitt Romney's advice on student loans? His advice on that is if for some reason you need help paying for college, frankly, you should have shopped around for a cheaper school.
I hope you shopped around. and tried to find a school that has the lowest possible tuition. My best advice is find a great institution of higher learning, find one that has the right price, shop around.
Even in the latest fight in Washington over student loans, it was President Obama and the Democrats saying that the interest rates on student loans should not be allowed to double this summer. Republicans in the Senate filibustered that. In terms of student loans, it was President Obama who doubled Pell Grants. It was President Obama who cut out the middleman, Sallie Mae, right? Cut out that middleman organization so that there wasn't random profit in the system that didn't serve students and put that money that had otherwise been going to bank profit toward more student loans. Nobody's done more on student loans to make the burden of student loans less than this administration. Mitt Romney does not believe in federal support for student loans and says instead, find a cheaper school, shop around. You're not going to get any help from me. But Karl Rove's assertion is that President Obama is making student loans worse. If you're worried about student loans, it's probably because of President Obama being so bad on the issue. And in this ad, it is Karl Rove's assertion that under President Obama, spending has gone through the roof. Unprecedented spending that started under President Obama. Factually speaking, spending has leveled off under President Obama. Spending is not skyrocketing under President Obama. Spending is flattening out under President Obama. If you do care about the national deficit, if Karl Rove's ad is working as he wants it to, and you are getting riled up about the national deficit, then you should probably hear the news from the nonpartisan Tax Policy Center. The Tax Policy Center estimates that the Romney budget plan would increase the deficit by several $1 trillion over the next decade. The Obama plan, on the other hand, would cut the deficit by trillions over the same period. Prepare for $10 million worth of this ad telling you that if you're worried about student loans and spending and the deficit, you ought to vote against the guy who has been comparatively pretty good on these issues. And at least on the deficit, you ought to vote for the guy who would make it worse by trillions and trillions of dollars. You cannot shock anybody by telling them that a Karl Rove ad tells a lie. The issue here is that these assertions in this $10 million ad buy are just blatantly, at face value, shockingly dishonest to anybody who understands anything about these issues that are in this ad. But we're told that Republicans have focus grouped this ad down to the last bristle on the airbrush. They are confident that the assertions in this ad, even though shockingly false to anybody who knows the facts, they are confident that the assertions in this ad will not actually be shocking to anyone. They are confident in that because they believe that people do not know what the facts are. Are they right? If so, the number one question for the Obama re-election campaign is, why don't more people know the actual facts? And how do you run on your record when the other side has crafted an entirely new record for you? A record that they would rather run against instead of the record of what you have actually done. The chief strategist for the Obama re-election campaign, David Axelrod, joins us next.